Hello everybody, welcome to another Basement Collective video. Today we're going to be looking at how I base my Space Wolves. I don't paint them, but I do base them, so we'll first look at the materials I use for my Space Wolf basing. We do use Mornfang Brown as a base coat, and that one we just put on top. The next paint we also use is a Nuln Oil. And then we use Ushabti Bone as a dry brush. And then we edge it with Steel Legion Drab. Now for the materials we use things for the bases. We use just regular white glue. I actually prefer wood glue, it's just the dollar store I didn't go to had wood glue, but PVA glue also works fine. Just the cheapest brush that you could find. You don't need anything good or bad, just something cheap. That's sand from Michaels. Again, you want a really finer sand. Regular GF9 rocks, medium size, and bright status grass, any color you want. We also use just a random bowl, any bowl will work. You'll need a towel, that's just to get your brush clean, so you don't want the glue drying on your brush even though you paid cheap for it, and a cup of water. That's about it, your regular painting / basing stuff needed. So yeah, now the bases I'm painting here are going to be 3 of the Centurion bases. Dreadnought base and just 10 infantry bases regular there. Stay tuned, we're also going to give these bases away once you're done, so just stay to the end of the video and we'll let you know about that. Okay, now let me preface this video by saying I'm not a professional baser. I don't paint, I can't paint, I try painting. I could probably teach myself to paint, but I do like the base scheme. What happened was I got my Space Wolf army. My first Space Wolf I did, I was playing Chaos, my roommate played Chaos. I decided I didn't want 2 people playing Chaos, so I traded my Chaos army for a Space Wolf army. Now what the Space Wolf army did is it came based already and painted. So I got the painter to match up painting, and then I tried my best to figure out what the basing was, and I found pretty close. So this is what I'm doing. So again, I'm not professional. This isn't a professional video. This is just showing what I do. It looks good. It's a good basing scheme, and it's not hard to do since I can do it. But anyways, the first step, of course, is you want to lay down your sand on your base. So you start with a wet brush because obviously it's easier to use because it's more stiff than just a dry brush tip. So you take your bases, I poured a little bit of glue there, you don't need too much, glue goes far, and you pour sand in a bucket. It's easier that way. And yeah, so now, yeah, so this is the way I do it. There's probably a bunch of easier ways. If you have any suggestions on how to make it easier, it's awesome, let me know. But you can do this with anything. It doesn't need to be this type of sand. This is just something I do. So you always want to get a generous layer of glue on a base there, so you can get the sand stuck to it. Now, like I said earlier on, I prefer using wood glue. Now, the reason why I do wood glue, it's more viscous. It's more thick. So if you could see it, this one you can't really tell, but it's pretty runny. It'll still work perfectly fine there, but also wood glue takes longer to dry. An important thing is after you put your base in the sand, you want to clean off the edges, because if that glue's there, sometimes it's going to be hard to get off, and it's not going to look good for when you go to edge it with your final base color there. So in the videos there, I show you how I did the first one, and then I sped it up, and then I deleted some of it because you guys don't want to watch a 45-minute video of me talking about how to base. So that's why it gets pretty quick here, and then it skips some parts, just because you really don't need to see everything. I just want to show you my main idea, and then how it's done there. But yeah, so you put a nice coat of glue on it, then you just dip it there, and that's how you see that one right there. So yeah. Now the next step I'm doing is you want to put the rocks on. What I did off video is I took my thing of rocks and I put it in the bowl. Of course, it's easier that way. You have a larger surface to pick up rocks. The important thing is, it doesn't matter for the static grass or the sand, but when you're going to put rocks on, you want to have the model you want to base, because you don't want to put rocks there so you can't stand the model properly. So it's always good to just size it out, see where the model's going, where the model's profile stands, and then put rocks around that. Now in regards to the rocks, there's no rhyme or reason to do it. I just put random rocks, random places. It looks good. You don't want too much uniformity, but yeah. So there you go. You see me. I'm just making sure the Killican is going to be enough spot. So yeah. So I know where the feet are going to go roughly, so I don't want to put rocks there, but anywhere else in the base is fair game. Now also I want to say it's a lot easier to do the basing with the models off the base, of course. Most of my models I've done, I did it before, after they've gone on the base, because my painter did it to me, shipped it back. I regretted it because I don't have that steady of a hand, so I did get some of the base wash paint or some of the ink on my my model's feet. It doesn't look that bad. I mean, they are standing in dirt, so I mean it just adds to it, but I would prefer doing it afterwards. So what I do here is I dab at random places on the model again, and then I sprinkle rocks on top, and then you push the rocks down because you want to get as much of the surface of the rocks in the glue as possible. Now I'm going to say about 25% of the rocks that are on here aren't going to be on by the end, because some of them are just being held on by a small edge, and what that does is when you go to dry brush it, when you go to base coat it, the brush is going to knock it off. So don't worry about that being knocked off. You just want to put enough that it shows that there's some rocks. You just don't want a flat grass. I mean, you could just do the flat sand, but doing some different levels and textures does make the base stand out a bit more. So here I'm just going over it, random dabs everywhere. Now, random dabs everywhere, no rhyme or reason. Put it in there, sprinkle it, and push it down. And then, yeah, so that's how you do the rocks now. So here I'm just cleaning off my brush, because even though the dollar store brushes, you don't have to buy a new one every time you want. So the glue is going to get stuck there. So if you just look here, I'm finished. All the bases are done. They all have small amount of rocks. It's always important to let the glue dry after this point. Also, I would suggest letting the glue dry before... letting the glue dry on the sand before you put the rocks on, because it's better that way. And as well, before you get to the next base coat, it's really important you have it dry, the glue dry completely. So let it sit for an hour and a half. Make sure everything's dry before moving on the base coat. Here, I'm just showing you that I did remember there, the models again do fit on the bases and not standing on rocks awkwardly. However, I did mess up on this one here. I did not pay attention too close, so luckily the glue is still dry. I knocked a few rocks off there and he stands properly now. And again, that was just an example. I'm not actually, you guys can win these bases, so I'm not actually going to use them. I'm just showing you that if you remember to do it properly, you won't have issues going on. Now it's the base coating step. Again, Mornfane Brown I use as a base coat, but you can use any color you want. I was thinking about doing like alien bases, so start with a green base and then do like a purple wash on top, and then get like a psychedelic color of basing on there, and you can do it like that, and that's fine. But yeah, for the basing, you want to provide, it doesn't matter how heavy or how light you go, because it doesn't really matter how heavy or light you go, because you want different shades, because it's a base, right? If you look at the ground, everything's not the same color, so some parts heavier and some parts lighter on the brown. It really doesn't matter. And what wash does is wash just kind of levels everything out. So just take a generous amount and just go nuts on the base. You want to make sure the whole base is covered with some sort of brown there, but I mean, even if a little bit of the sand's showing through, it really doesn't matter, again, because the wash will even everything out, and then you'll have different shades of brown, which allows the base to pop out even more. So you can see, you want to make sure you get everywhere on the rocks you glued on, make sure everything's filled in there. The rocks are a bit, my rocks I used are a bit lighter, so you want to make sure that everything in the cracks in the rocks is nice and full. Don't worry about getting anything on the edge, and that's just something you fix later there. And again, you make sure everything's glued, the glue is dried on here, because if not, you're going to mess up the base and you're going to have to restart. And so if you notice there, one spot's darker right there than lighter because it's more paint, but again, doesn't matter, it's just going to be different levels. So I'm just going to speed it up here and hop through it to the end. This is an easy basing scheme. I like it. I've got compliments on it before, and I know it's something maybe you guys can try. And yeah, so just try anything. You can use any sand you want, any rocks you want. It's just a simple way I taught myself to do, and if I could do it, I'm sure you guys can do it. Okay, yeah, so we're getting close to the end of this segment here with me basing him. I mean, it gets pretty boring to watch me here, so but But yeah, like I said, it is the Basement Collective. We're going to try to do some tutorials here and then. My brother's an addict for magnetizing things, so I mean magnetizing and building, even though he's trying to teach himself to paint, but Kevin really likes the magnetizing there. So we're going to do some videos. I know where we got a Knight we're going to magnetize the guns on eventually, and Riptide we're going to magnetize the guns on as well. So we're going to do tutorials on that. But yeah, it was just something that I'd have to do there, so we have to do base. So you always want to base a model, right? Basing a model sets the models out from everything. I have a buddy, Eric you saw in the video, we call him Slav. He doesn't like basing models. He's against it because you don't want a desert terrain on like a forest terrain. But I think even though he just paints in black, I still think it looks better to have the models based. Yeah, so I'm done here. I'm cleaning off my brush again. Keep your brushes clean. I know they're only $1.50, but my brother used them and destroyed them. So here's the finished product after the base coat. And now we move on to the wash. Now, basically, Nolan oils, the wash I use, you can use Arjax Earthshade, but brown on brown really it would go good. But I like the darker wash on the bases there. So I'm gonna use that same brush again. You just provide a generous amount there, generous amount on the base. You want it to completely cover the base, and in the rocks you want it to do a lot too. I started off with this brush. It worked okay, but then I think I moved to the bigger brush eventually. Yeah, so here I am. I just put a generous amount. I realized this isn't working that well. Let's use a bigger brush. Of course, I'm not a professional painter. I don't do this stuff. I don't know how to paint. I just like basing my models. My brother actually got me to base his Ogre Kingdom army that he got painted up. It's just we used the exact same scheme. We just used a different static graphs, and it's just that easy, guys, to make a base. I know some people just like gluing sand. When I first started basing is I glue sand down and I glue flocking, and you know what, it worked. Some people like it, but I mean this just puts it an extra level there, and having like different shades using the base coat, the wash, the dry brush, it stands out the base. So you can have an awesome painted model, but then if you just have sand on a base, you know what, it's base, it still looks cool, but this steps it up. I mean, I've looked at a model from like some really cool paint job, but it's a black base. And I mean, the base honestly takes away from the model if it's not done properly, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, of course. Everybody else has different opinions, so it's always good to make sure you got a nice base. So here you go. I'm at the end of this. We've done painting it. We washed it. Now also, again, you need to let the base coat dry before you wash it. And here's the finished product of the wash. It's not dry yet, so it's still a bit shiny, but here it is. Now the next step we move on is to dry brush. For the dry brush, you're going to need a piece of paper, whatever you use to get the paint off your brush. I don't know if this is actually how you dry brush. This is how I dry brush, and it works fine. You put the paint in, you make sure it's nice and dry. It doesn't put much on the paper, and then you just go to town on the bases. Everything doesn't need to have an even coat of dry brush. You want some white to be everywhere, but some parts to be heavier, some parts to be lighter is good. I always start by doing the rocks, though, because by doing that to the rocks have the edges and the crevices, and it gives it a nice outline and a good look to the rocks. So you only make sure you get a good amount on the rocks, but everywhere else on the sand, you just do the small amounts there. All in all, probably you're looking at a time of, for a small infantry base, probably 10 minutes, 15 minutes to get it done, but that's obviously waiting for things to dry. I probably did at one point in time to base all my models, 50 models with a mix of the Monsters Creature bases, the Terminator bases, the infantry bases. If you do long enough, eventually you can start one step, and by the end of the step, the previous step is dry, so you can start over again. But yeah, I probably spent basing my models. I'd probably say 200 individual Space Wolf models. About 40 of them, 50 of them came based, and then I based everything else. At the end of the video, I'm going to show you just some of the models, what models look on him. Yeah, so I made the mistake of basing them after the models were on. I should have took them out the base, it would have been easier. But that's how that goes there. So I'm done here, and here's the finished step. If you can look, there's you can see the different levels of whiteness, and that's good. so the different levels of whiteness gives it again a different look. So not everything's uniform, because if you look outside, everything's not uniform. Now the final step on top of the base before the edging, you put some static grass in the bowl. I like the bowl. It helps, keeps everything there, and you just use white glue again. Just a heads up. When you go to put the white glue on, you want to go put the white glue in water. Glue is like water; it naturally wants to go in a circle. In my experience, you don't want it just circles. You want like random shapes, because grass isn't always just in a circle. You want a diversity of shapes on the base, and you also don't want them have like the same amount of flocking on each base in the same space. You want diversity. So you just put a good amount of glue on your palette. You want to use a smaller tip brush so you can do a bit more like shaping with because if you have a big fat brush, you won't be able to shape it pretty well. So I just take a good amount of glue. You also want to put a good amount of glue on it, because you want the static grass to stick there. So on my first base, I decided I just want to do a path through the base, and yeah, so I went across the whole base. You don't want to put sand. You don't want to put. I didn't want to put flocking on the rocks. It takes the look of the rocks away, and then yeah, in real life, if there's rocks there, there's not going to be grass growing on top of the rocks. As compared to some of my models, which I actually did the corking and I still put grass on. It looks cool, but in reality, it actually doesn't happen like that. You can call it moss, but if you're using the grass, it should be grass. But yeah, so here we go. You see, I got my glue on there, a nice amount of glue. The way you want to do it is you don't want to drop the static grass on it. You want to grab a good pinch of it and push it into the glue. That way it'll stand up more. It'll be more stand up. It'll be standing up the static grass, and then it won't just be. It'll be a heavy coating, because if you just sprinkle it on there, it's not going to be a heavy coating, and some of the glue may show through. So you want to really push it in there and make sure every spot of the glue is covered. That way it looks like a thick patch of grass. So the small bases, some of them I just did a dot or a X on the edges. Some I just did on the edges. If you look there, I did one of the edges and then a small little dot. You stick the glue in there, and again, you want to try to be diverse. I'm not very creative myself. This is just something I think it looks good. I mean, the guy who originally did my bases for the spatial farming I got used, did a really good job on him. His is a bit better than mine, but I tried my best to match. But also when you go to base coat, I showed you with my brush just earlier there, I pointed at something. It looked like a shiny spot. Basically what happened there was a bit of the sand got off, so I had to there was a spot where the base showing. You just want to put static grass there to fill it up there. So if you see that, and when you go to base coat, some of the sand comes off because you didn't put enough glue on the base, don't worry about that. Static grass is going to cover it up. So yeah, so I'm on my last base here, and then yeah, so you pinch it out there, you pinch it, put it on the base again is the best way to do it, and you'll have some static grass there. So if you look on the left side of the screen, everything's pretty diversified. I think I did a pretty good job diversifying it, and so it looks like they're not all standing on the exact same base. It's different terrain. Okay, so the static grass is done, and now we move on to the edging. Here's the completed project. Looks pretty good. The edging is going to make your base stand out. At this point, you're like, it doesn't really look that good, but trust me, when you do the edging on the base, I use Steel Legion Drab. It's going to pop it out, because until then, you got like the mess of the base, and like the base kind of bleeds in with the edge, which makes it look off. So you want to use you want to base it as a different shade. I use Steel Legion Drab because that's what the previous painter did. Again, you can use any color you want, but yeah, so you want to also use a flat brush. You don't want to use a circular brush, because you just want as much surface area as possible. This flat brush I was using, I had to switch out though, because it was defected. Some of the bristles were some of the bristles were stuck together, and I guess some heat got applied to it, so it was melted, so it wasn't really that good. So I did switch out brushes to another flat brush I had. But you just want to do 2 coats, so don't worry about getting it too thick, because too thick you're going to see lines. But I'm still, some people prefer to thin out paints when they do this. I could care less. I mean, it's going to look good. I don't want it to be professional. I just want it to be a good looking base on a model that I paid to get painted. So you want to just do 2 coats. In here, the 2 coats aren't really separated. I did do 2 coats on each though. So the first one, you just put it on there, you get the paste coat, and then the second one, you want to make sure everything's covered there. So yeah, so that's what I did for this. Again, Steel Legion job. Here I am just doing the second coat, the second coat on the small bases, the 25 mil bases. And it looks pretty good. I will show you a showcase at the end. When you look at the showcase, you're gonna see it's pretty thick, but you know, who really cares? Nobody's gonna look and inspect. But from a far table edge, you're gonna see that looks pretty good. It's based. It pops the top of the base. Again, if you want it to look perfect, you can water it down. But by watering it down, you're probably gonna have to do about 4 coats. But if you're a perfectionist and you want to water it down, go ahead. Use about 2 paint to 1 water. And it's going to take about 4 coats, but that way you got no streaks and nothing. So here's the finished bases. I'm going to do a showcase of just a few of the bases here. As you see, it looks pretty good. Mind my big fingers here. The things sticking off, these are 50 mil, the Centurion bases. The things sticking off actually aren't there. I guess it was just like extra stuff on my palette that I didn't clean. But yeah, again, that's just not there. So if you see, it looks pretty good on the base. It does have some little static grass I painted over, but you know what, it perfectly fine there. And then again, there's I think that's still another 50 mil base. It may be the Terminator, it may be the Monstrous Creature base, but yeah, that was a 60 meter. Here's another 50 millimeter. Again, I like this one. I find that one turned out good at different paths there. It looks interesting. And then there's 2 of the 25 mils. Just different diversity there in the basing, in the static grass scheme. So what I'm going to show you next is just some of my models on the bases. Now, those models are, again, they were painted and put on the base, and I already did on the base. So you can get a lot better looks if you want to do the bases before. And yeah, you want to get a lot better looks if you do the bases before you put the model and then glue the model on top of the base. Now here's Murder Fang. Again, this is my favorite model. On this one, I missed, you can tell right there by the foot, I missed the dry brush. I'm going to go fix that after this is done. But this is just showcasing our friend Riesian Wolf. Again, these are both painted by the same painter, my roommate. But yeah, so that just shows you the model on the base. It looks cool. The base, the edge, the bevel of the base makes the base pop. And yeah, so here is Swiftclaw. Now these ones are tricky. I especially on the bike bases, to get underneath the bike was hard. So you always want, like, especially for a bike base, you're gonna want to do the base before you put the model on. I tried it with the model on it, and it was a lot harder than it should have been. It took a lot more time than it should have. And here's Mr. the Great Wolf himself, Lehman Russ. Again, just to get not Lehman Russ, Logan Grimnor, my apology. But the diversity of the base looks good there. The different highlights there makes it pop. Again, I did the dogs. I don't do the ice. I hate that they made the chariot the ice. So because my army is based on rocks, not every space swap needs to be based on ice, on snow. So I try to make them look like rocks. Here's just showing it's exact same steps, but we use a different color static grass. So it gave it a muted look, but it still looks pretty good for the ogres because you don't want to take away from the models itself. So yeah, so it's just showing you there just for the lead belchers, the different look with a different static grass, but use any type of stand you want. Now we're going to go on to our giveaway. I painted these bases with just bases laying them around, and you know what, I want to give it to you guys. It's not much, but it's still a good set of bases. 50 millimeters are good. So all you need to do is subscribe to our channel and comment, drop the base. Okay guys, so once you subscribe and you comment, drop the base, also like the video, and once we get to 80 subscribers, what we'll do is we'll pick somebody at random and we'll send them a YouTube message through the comments. So it'll just be a randomized choice from the comments, and if you're subscribed, you'll win. So we'll send you a message, we'll ask for your shipping information, we'll get those shipped out free of charge to you, of course. But like I said, to qualify once again, you just need to subscribe, you need to comment, drop the base on the video, and just give us a like on the video as well. And yeah, so what I'll do is I'll just post this up in the chat so you can see exactly what's going to happen here. So once again, we do thank you for watching, and we are going to be doing other giveaways in the future, maybe even models, armies, whatever it looks, whatever happens. We'd like to build our subscribers, and we like giveaways, so we're sure you will too. So once again, thank you for watching another Basement Collected tutorial. We hope to do more in the future. But until our next video, thank you for watching and enjoy wargaming.